Good afternoon again. I hope everyone enjoyed the buffet. I've had a couple folks say that this is one of the best buffets that they've had in a long, long time. I believe it's actually very, very true. So thanks to Harborside and for the folks who arranged it was wonderful. Service was great, food was great, and if I can figure out how to sneak another dessert, I will do so before the day's out. Well, I have good news and I have bad news. Which would you like to hear first? Okay, the bad news. Unfortunately, at the last moment, one of our speakers, Enrique Padron, was faced with a conflict and is unable to attend today. We just found out about this pretty much at the last minute on Monday. It was unavoidable, something that couldn't change. As you know, Mr. Padron is the legislative aide to Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, who represents the 25th Congressional Circuit here in Florida. He's unable to attend today, but the good news of that is that our two speakers, Mr. Siegel and Mr. Gargano, have more time to speak, and we'll gain some very, very insightful information from each of those folks. So bad news, good news, but frankly, I think the good news way outweighs the bad news. So our apologies for one of our speakers not being able to attend, but you know what, we'll get by. As mentioned, the key that we want to learn about today is Cuba. What happens now? We all have this vision that Cuba is this really romantic paradise where everyone has Panama hats and cigars and a glass of rum and everything's wonderful. Is that true or is it not? We're going to find out about that. We're going to learn about it. What are the logistics and how do we get there? How is this going to work? Are we all going to hop on the Royal Princess cruise line and go down there and just have a gay old time? Who knows? Are we going to be able to fly to the airport starting next Monday? These are the things that are very important to us. They're very important to the country, but they're very, very important to our region because of our proximity. So these are things that we're going to learn about from our two speakers today. Our format is something that you're familiar with. We have two great speakers. They're going to discuss various topics this morning. We'll start out with Ben Siegel and then Mr. Gargano. We have our panelist today is Alexis Crespo, who, oddly enough, has some really significant insights into Cuba herself. I'll let her talk to you about those in a few moments. And then our timekeeper will be none other than our Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Gary Verwill, back in the back. So he'll raise the paddle when things get a little bit long. Our goal will be to be finished by about 1 o'clock. If it goes a little bit longer and you have to leave, please feel free to do so. So that's kind of how we'll go forward. There's some cards at your table if you'd like to write questions for Alexis to ask, or she will be able to roam around the room and take questions from the floor as well. So start thinking about things that you might want to learn about. What I'd like to do, I'll call up Mr. Siegel first and then Mr. Gargano. Ben Siegel, CPA, is the Deputy Executive Director for Administration for the Lee County Port Authority. He directs and supervises all the Port Authority's financial matters, as well as a large majority of, if not all, of their administrative matters, dealing with properties, marketing, business development, human resources, public affairs, information, technology, purchasing, general services, and the like. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from South Florida, and is, as I mentioned, a CPA. He previously was with the international accounting firm Coopers & Lybrand. He joined the Port Authority in 1992, and through hard work and a series of efforts on his part, he moved through the ranks there to where in 2008 he was named Deputy Executive Director, reporting directly to Bob Ball, the Executive Director. He's a member of the American Association of Airport Executives, the Florida Airports Council, the Airports Council International, the Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So we're honored to have Mr. Siegel today. I'd like to also introduce very briefly so that we can move through the program, Mr. Anthony Gargano. He retired after several years as a consultant and writer for the broadcast television and video production industry. He was president and CEO of Agile Vision, a pioneering company in HD TV technology. I can't thank him enough for that, because everyone who has HD TV understands how great that is and how great an opportunity that is for us to be able to get better service and to see things much more clearly. Prior to that, he was Senior Vice President at Sony, responsible for their commercial division that provided technology to television, programming production, and the movie industry. After retirement, and before relocating to South of Florida, his passion for photography led him to various sporting events and places throughout the world. We're going to gain some insight from Mr. Gargano today into Cuba that you would not get anywhere else. He has an MBA from St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. He's also a graduate of the Tuck Executive Program at Dartmouth College, and as well, the Tokyo Management Program at the Sony Institute in Tokyo. So without further ado, I'd like to call up Mr. Ben Siegel. Mr. Siegel will speak for about 10 or so minutes, then Mr. Gargano will speak, and then Alexis Crespo will ask questions, not only the ones that have been submitted through our website, but then she'll pass the mic around for others as well. So Mr. Siegel?
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. When you talk about air service, there's a lot of things that come to mind in terms of what we go through each and every day. We have a marketing team of really 2 full-time employees. That's all they do 12 months out of the year is spend time working on air service. So whether you're talking about Cuba, whether you're talking about New York City, or you're talking about San Juan,
Speak up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is this better?
Much better.
Okay, thank you. So when you're talking about air service, there's a lot of time and effort goes into it. Air service is probably the most important thing that you need to get any air service is data. Data is like the #1 thing that we need. Where do we get that data? Well, we get data from all sorts of data mining companies. It's the same data that the airlines use when they're making determinations in terms of service. When you reflect on an area like Cuba, there is no data that exists today. The restrictions just recently have changed, obviously, in Cuba, so there are more opportunities for people to fly to Cuba. But they're flying. Where are they flying from? They're flying out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Tampa right now. There's a higher concentration of people that want to go to Cuba in those areas. We've already started talking to airlines. There are probably 3 or 4 airlines, and I'll name them: American Airlines, Delta, Spirit, and I believe JetBlue, that are interested in Cuba and fly to Cuba now. But it's all charter basis. It's all charter service. There's no scheduled service to Cuba. There's no tourism travel allowed to Cuba right now. So, when you speak of Cuba, we don't have any data. So our story is that we want charter service. We want the opportunity to start moving some of our past customers that qualify to Cuba. But we don't have any data to support that because the data doesn't exist today. With the changes in restrictions, I think what you're going to see is data. You're going to start seeing data. So now we can go to these airlines and start telling a really compelling story. And it takes a really compelling story. You need origination and destination information. You need census data in terms of the population of people that are traveling. You need to find out where people are going once they get to another city. There's a lot of, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's talk about Denver. We have good service to Denver. We have 3 airlines that fly to Denver right now. Well, we don't have any service that goes out to California or Las Vegas. People are like, we need service to those destinations. How come we don't have it? Well, we're compiling data through Denver. Where are these passengers going once they get to Denver? Then we can take that data and get in the faces of the airlines and tell them that, look, here's the information, here's the data that you need to help make a decision. And keep in mind that the airlines have all this data, but they're not looking at all of it. They can't look at all of it. It's our job as the marketing group at the Southwest Florida International Airport to make sure that we get in their face and we put that data there and show them that they can make money in these markets. Now, Cuba, on a short-term basis, I do not see a lot of opportunity. I don't see on a short-term basis where you're going to see charter activity coming in and out of Southwest Florida. Actually, the numbers, when I look at the census data, the numbers are actually there, but there's no supporting data like we have for like a San Juan to say, hey, people are moving. People are flying to San Juan. Well, people really can't fly to Cuba right now, so we don't have that data. But when you talk about San Juan, they're going there, but how are they going there? They're going through Miami, they're going through Fort Lauderdale. And once we start getting data on Cuba, I think that'll help. I think on a long-term basis, there's a lot of opportunities. It's going to take a lot of action on our federal government for those opportunities to take place. Right now, there is no civil aviation agreement with Cuba. So, you can't just, you cannot have scheduled service into Cuba right now. No U.S. carriers can do that. There's obviously no open skies agreement with Cuba. So you're not going to have that, you're not going to have that opportunity. So as the federal government moves along with their baby steps that they're taking with Cuba, opportunities will exist. Another issue that you have to consider. Another issue that you have to consider is how protective is Cuba going to be for their flag carrier. They have a flag carrier, Cuba, and how much do they want to protect Cuba from the U.S. flag carrier? So that all comes into play when you start talking about open sky agreements and civil aviation agreements. So certainly some challenges will continue there. Now, if we had the perfect story, all the data lined up, and the open skies agreements were in place, anybody could fly to Cuba, and we were in the face of all of the airlines that are interested in flying to Cuba, and the yields they could actually make money doing that, it's still difficult to get the air service. Because you're talking about moving very expensive equipment into markets. They just don't do that every day. So it's very difficult. I gotta tell you, San Juan will start in May. We've spent 10 years and we've had good, compelling data. For 10 years, we've been trying to get that service. We just got it. And the biggest change, sometimes it's easier to get the service than it is to maintain the service. It's gonna take a lot to keep it. And we're all in. The airport has incentive programs that we offer to carriers to basically share the business risk of starting a new market. So we're participating in great partnerships with really all the VCBs in the area, whether it's Lee County's VCB or Collier County's VCB and the other surrounding counties. We have an outstanding relationship with all the tourism and hotels, and it should work. But if people don't want to get on the airplane at the end of the day on a regular basis, the service will go away. I mean, that's a fact. It will. They're in the business to make money, just like all of us. So we're hoping to sustain it. And I think Cuba is going to be no different. If we ever get the opportunity to have scheduled service to a destination like Cuba, getting it is one thing, but then maintaining it and keeping it is going to be another. So it's certainly going to be challenging. I think that just in closing, I think it's going to be a lot of patience. A lot of patience is required. I think when people start hearing Cuba, they start thinking, oh, how come we don't have direct service to Cuba? We should have direct service to Cuba. They have it in Tampa. They have it in Miami. Well, it requires a lot of patience. We're a much different destination than they are, and even a Miami scheduled service. Using the example I just used, if everything lined up tomorrow, if we could do scheduled service starting tomorrow, it's going to happen in Miami first. That's where it's going to happen first. But it's our job as your local airport to make sure that we are in the face of these airlines and making sure that they're not only looking at all this other data, but they're looking at our data. Our data to support, service to destinations in Cuba or any other place. And with that, I think I will conclude, and we're going to do questions later. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Just an old retiree who's a very avid photographer, and I enjoy taking photography trips and photography workshops at least once a year. Cuba has been on my photography workshop bucket list for some time. And last year, year, I decided to go, and I was there the first week of November. And just 2 weeks, just 2 weeks too soon, because 2 weeks after I got back, the announcements were made to kind of relax the travel restrictions and what you could bring back. And so I missed out on my opportunity to bring back those Cuban cigars that I really enjoyed when I was younger. Anyway, what I'm going to share with you today is, like I said, I'm just an old retiree, I'm a civilian. And I'm just going to share with you some photography, I'll make some comments with regard to the experiences that I had there. I will say it was an incredible trip. I will go back, most definitely, and I absolutely loved the people were just incredible. One of the first things, the size of the group that went, there were 12 of us. And I kind of expected that we'd be on some little 2-engine bubble jumper because it's a charter flight out of Miami. And lo and behold, at the airport, you're in a regular airport terminal, regular there was a whole lounge full of people. Here was the signboard. This American Airlines flight, I found, actually travels there daily. And the flight that day was full, and I was told it's full every day. And then if you do get rights, get some airlines down there, one of the things we're going to have to do is build some infrastructure, because the airport down there, I think it had 2 gates. And when we arrived, there was no jet line. You just walked down the steps. They rolled the steps up to the plane, walked down the steps. When you hear Cuba, you think of, you see the picture of old cars, and you think, well, I'm going to see the occasional old car there. No, they're all old cars there. This was just, I was standing on the corner, and these cars were just waiting for the traffic light to change. I mean, this is typical Cuba. This is Havana. I spent a week there, and most of the week was in Havana, and got out to the countryside just one day. I was fascinated by all of the hand-drawn artwork on the walls, even a handmade Cuban flag there. Laundry you see hanging out all over. They had warned us, when you're walking around, be careful where you walk because of holes in the sidewalk, holes in the street. But they didn't tell us be careful. You need to look up also, because often you were dripped away from the hanging laundry. And I saw this stairway, and I thought to myself, imagine after a night out, a couple of beers, having to navigate that stairway. I don't think I would make it. This is just a shot at the Malecon, which is the seawall there at the harbor. This is typical. The architecture there is just beautiful. It's just spectacular, but it's all crumbling. It's just all crumbling. And it's just it's so sad to see the state of deterioration. Again, another old car. This scene kind of reminded me of old New Orleans. One of the very few restaurants. The second day I was there, on the trip we picked up 2 Cuban photographers and a Cuban guide. And the second day I was there, I asked one of the Cuban photographers, "Where's a good place to go for food? Get good food, good restaurant?" And he looked at me, kind of smiled, and he said, "You're in Cuba. When you find food, it's good." But interestingly enough, just this morning I was listening to a BBC report from Havana, and they were explaining that since the announcement, in the past 3 months, there's been an explosion of restaurant activity. So guess they're getting prepared. By the way, when I was in Cuba, the government is now encouraging entrepreneurship, and there were people opening restaurants within their homes. So you book a reservation to go to their home. You don't have a menu selection. You eat what's being cooked. A couple of women just very friendly, sitting out, chatting, smiling. We were told ahead of time, you'll find the Cuban people to be very friendly, very open to taking pictures, but they'll expect something. And of course, the first thing you think of is money. And they said, no, bring necessities. Bring Band-Aids, toothpaste, toothbrushes, aspirin. So I was loaded up with those kinds of things in my camera bag. And they really appreciated it. They really appreciated that stuff. I had a woman approach me while I was walking down the street. It's just a corner vegetable market. I'm walking down the street, and she approached me. She said, "Pasta?" And I'm Italian. I hear pasta. I think pasta. And so I guess I had this puzzled look on my face, and she said, "Pasta." And I just kind of shook my head, and she went, "Pasta." She was saying toothpaste. She wanted to know if I had toothpaste. So I gave her a tube of toothpaste. She was very, very happy. They also told us if you were so inclined to wear old clothes, bring old clothes, and when you left, leave the clothes, which I did. I don't know that I want to be buying my meat there, or, it's just out, rusty scale, and, another friendly fellow. Everybody would just smile, and they were just as warm as could be. Saw this fellow, and he was. I just admired the pride. To me, he just had this very proudful look. And I asked if I could take a picture. Kids, you gotta love the kids. I mean, the kids are great. Speaking of the entrepreneurship, now here's a young lady. She's out in front of her home, and this is her little shop. She's selling cigars, batteries, lotion, and this is the beginnings down there of what they explained to me is they're attempting to model the country on the Chinese version of communism. So it's totalitarian government, but there's now the encouragement of capitalism and enterprise. I saw this little cutie, and I just couldn't resist, and she knew she was cute. I mean, she gave me that pose. And this was her father. He was actually standing right next to where she was. This couple was just sitting out. There was no front wall to the house. They were just sitting out having their morning coffee, and just, again, warm and friendly as could be. They invited me in. This was their kitchen. The average wage in Cuba is $21 a month. This was where they slept. This was their sleeping area. I wouldn't call it a bedroom. This fella, he was a real hand. He actually went in. He went back in and brought out 3 or 4 hats. He tried different hats on for me. Again, you can see the deterioration that was mentioned earlier. One of my favorite pictures. This little fellow was there, and I saw him, and I have a grandson his age, and I saw him, and I thought to myself, just the accidents of birth. This could have been my grandson. You see the eggs on the floor. They get food rations. They get eggs, beans, flour, sugar, coffee. On a daily, that's a monthly basis. On a daily basis, for children, they get a liter of milk with bread And I have a picture, you'll see one of the ration stores. This was a schoolroom, and I was standing there, and I guess the little girl on the left kind of felt eyes in the back of her head because she turned around, and as soon as she turned around, I said, that's the picture. Here's a proud pop. This is one of the ration stores. So this is where they go to get their food rations, and these were all over the place. Again, some of the the interesting architecture. As a photographer, things like this have appeal, and I stood there. I liked what I saw, but I needed somebody to tie the picture together. And I happened to see this woman at the end of the street slowly walking down. So I waited because I knew that splash of red, put her in there, that would make the photo for me. A typical street scene in Old Havana, and who can pass the quiz? What year Chevy?
55.
55. 55. Again, the architecture, I just love the architecture, the balconies, and the work in this in these buildings. There is so much restoration to be done here. I saw this couple, and the painting, American Gothic. I saw this couple, I thought, this is Cuban Gothic. Never seen. Always with the laundry hanging out.
Bugs? Were there lots of bugs?
No. Question was, were there lots of bugs? I was actually walking in the street, and this woman yelled down to me. She wanted a picture. So she gave me the big smile and snapped the photo. Here's, again, you just see the deterioration. I saw this, and the stairs, and the door frame, which is all kind of pulled together. Friendly woman. I took this photo because I saw this couple walking, and you could see the oversized shoes, if you call them shoes, the oversized shoes that she's wearing, and the undersized shoes that he has on. And I looked at those heels, and they are so calloused. It looked like you could hammer nails with them. A couple of youngsters walking along the Malecon. They're fun-loving people. This was just a street scene that I happened to catch. Who's got the car? What is it?
It's 56.
55 Buick. My dad had one of those. I used to borrow it to go out on dates. And I saw this picture, and I said, this is something I have to catch. This scaffold has been there for so long, it's growing ivy of the scaffold. And of course, the old cars, 57 Chevy, and there's another Chevy behind it, maybe 52, 53. This is the Capitolo, the Cuban capital. Hopefully, vines won't be growing on the scaffolding they have around the Capitol there. A panorama of the skyline of Old Havana. And I'm not sure if it's being, you can see it on the computer. This was a rainy morning. I was out every morning for what we call dawn patrol. And don't put your camera away even in the rain. So I'm getting the sign here. I saw this picture. I had to photograph this picture of Fidel because I asked one of our guys, I said, this is the only time I saw a picture of Fidel. No pictures, no statues. And she looked at me kind of funny. She said, well, he's not dead yet. People waiting for the bus. Here's another entrepreneur. This looks like Home Depot. She's got PVC and some things that she's out there selling. Part of this was a cultural trip, so we went to the Cuban School of Ballet, shot some of the ballet dancers, a school child. I saw this fellow, and I'd never seen an amputee to this level. I mean, you can just see his face. But I got him to smile. So I'm just going to run through some of these. We also went to an Afro-Cuban dance festival. And some of the people in the audience. This fellow, he wanted to ham it up. You know, he was making all kinds of faces for it. This was a curio shop, and I mean, everything was there. There was something in the lower right corner that I'm going to show in the next picture. And when I saw that, I said to the shop owner, I said, "You have to sell me that. At my age, I need that in my bag. I need that gun in my bag." Believe it or not, he wouldn't sell it. He would not sell it to me. He said, "That's the only thing there that's not for sale." Some pedicats. That's electrical service going into the house. Another entrepreneur, you know, the plastic lighters that we throw away. He's selling refills. He has an ortho-butane refill, and he would refill your lighter. Okay, I guess we're out of time. If you want to see these pictures or any more, I have a website. And you see that Pickstargano. My website is pickstargano.com. You can see a lot more pictures. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. As Ron mentioned, my name is Alexis Crespo, and I have the privilege and honor of being married to a Cuban American, so I believe that's why I'm tasked with moderating the questions today. And I did meet my husband while traveling as a Canadian citizen at the time to Cuba, and some of Anthony's pictures brought back a lot of memories from my first trip there. My first visit to my future mother-in-law's home, she presented me with a bucket of water to shower with and asked if I would like it warmed up. And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it, I got it, it's fine." So I knew it was love. So that's why I'm up here today. So we've got some questions. I know that Enrique was unable to attend, so if these are immigration related or outside the scope that you'd like to speak to, just let me know on that. But our first question will be for Mr. Siegel. From a financial perspective, what impact to taxpayers do you see associated with establishing airfare connection through RSW?
You know, the economic impact of a flight is quite significant. I mean, our airport as a whole, we have about 8 million passengers that go through a year, and that has an economic impact of about $4 billion in our community. From a financial standpoint, every passenger, you know, I drove down to every customer. You know, I like to call them customers that whether it's a full airplane going to Cuba or anywhere else, those passengers are spending money in our airport, and it's significant. Whether they're renting cars, restaurants, whatever, and so it obviously goes into support our operations. From a financial incentive standpoint, and what we're able to offer the airlines for service is actually quite substantial. It can be over a 2-year period as much as $350,000 that will help them market and support their service.
Thank you. This next one will be for Mr. Gardino. In your travels to Cuba, did you see the extent of the Cuban black market as a segment of the overall economy, and how do you see Obama's plan either assisting in helping to eliminate that black market, or do you see it strengthening that economy within the country?
I didn't see any. Actually, I didn't see anything of black market there. Nothing at all. From the standpoint of the relaxation of travel restrictions, quite honestly, when I went to Cuba, I hadn't given a lot of thought to those restrictions, and I really hadn't had an opinion because I hadn't thought about it one way or the other. But after my experience with the people, I'm very much in favor of seeing the restrictions lifted, talking with the people. They are, especially the young people, very much in favor of having the restrictions lifted. And as they enter into this entrepreneurial stage of their economy, I only see the increase in tourism from this place that's only 90 miles away. I think will really lift the entire economy and lift the people with it.
This question can be directed to you both from both a professional and a personal perspective. In your opinion, does Cuba appear to be a safe tourist destination when compared to other competing markets in the Caribbean and Mexico? And how will this perception help or hurt the budding tourism industry in Cuba?
I'm actually not going to really be able to tell you too much about whether or not it's safe or not. I don't know, with Anthony being over there, you might have a better perspective on that.
Yeah, I was out at all times. I was out early in the morning. I do this, I do what we call dawn patrol, out before sunrise when it was still dark. I'd be out late at night, sometimes with others, sometimes on my own. I never once felt unsafe, not a single time, never once. And I felt a lot safer there than I have in other Latin American countries.
Ben, what can Tiger Bay members do to help encourage connectivity to Cuba? Is there anything we can do to support those efforts?
You know, I think it's important that when you talk about air service, I run into people on a regular basis and ask them questions why we don't have service in certain areas, and I think it's important that professionals like yourself make sure people understand that first of all that the airport spends 12 months a year marketing the airport, trying to get service to all the destinations that we'd like to go to, but it is very difficult. And but when we do get it, and we are fortunate to have direct service to a destination like San Juan, a destination like Dusseldorf, or any future opportunity to Cuba, that you use it. You use it because we can talk about it all we want and say how bad we need it, but if we're not using it, it won't, as I said earlier, it won't last. And so it's very important to make sure that we use it if we do get the opportunity to have it.
This is directed more at the political immigration side of things, but it's certainly a hot topic with a lot of the established Cuban community in Miami. Do you think that the increase in tourism dollars and increased economic development opportunities by opening up the door with America will bolster the Castro regime? Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
The opinion that I'll share with you is that particularly the young people. I mean, the young people that I met, the young people that I talked with, they were happy with their government. They were happy the direction the government was taking because things are opening up. The government is relaxing rules on the population, and they were happy with that trend. Again, from an economic standpoint, I can see the spending of tourist dollars directly affecting, directly impacting the people that it needs to impact. I heard an interesting perspective from one young group that I was talking with, and they said that they blame, they think the embargo is wrong. They blame the embargo, they said, not on the American people, but on American politicians because, and this is their perspective, they said that the American politicians bowed to the voting bloc of Miami Cubans who were always supportive of the embargo,
And their opinion was that the Miami Cuban voting bloc, or the Cuban people there, had this, the older generation there, had this unrealistic expectation that once the Castros were gone, they'd be able to return, recover their assets, recover their property, and of course that's just not going to happen. And I was just listening this morning to a BBC News piece on Cuba, and one of the things that they were saying on the BBC News piece this morning was that there's a rift between the older people in Miami and the older Cubans in Miami and younger Cubans in Miami, because the younger Cubans seem to be more in agreement with the opinions that I heard from the Cubans in Cuba.
I think we just have a couple more before we open it up to the floor, since we are short on time. But in looking at your photos, you know, obviously the poverty is very visible in Cuba. Can you discuss the dichotomy of that extreme poverty with the very high standards of education, secondary education there, as well as the healthcare policies that keep the country at a very high rate of health and longevity when compared to other first world countries?
Well, the only comment that I would make is that, once again, the young people being very happy with what their government was doing, because their education is free, their medical care is free, and in fact, again on that BBC report, they were interviewing a college student, and the college student says that what she was looking for was really the best. She doesn't want the government to change. She said this is the best of both worlds if we can improve the economy, but still retain the benefits that we get with regard to free education and free medical care.
At this time, I'm happy to entertain questions from the floor. We also have a Tiger Bay board member, Ms. Jenna Persons, who was a visitor here very recently. So perhaps she might want to add any comments, but do we have any questions?
I noticed you didn't have any pictures of the baseball team from Cuba. Do you see defection coming to the to the baseball here in America?
I did not go to a ballpark or see any of the baseball activity in Cuba, so I really can't comment on that. I'm sorry.
This is for Ben. You mentioned the data. Data from restrictive governments is often suspect. How do you verify the data that you hope to get from the Cuban government?
Very good question. The data that I'm referring to is data that we actually get here. It's not going to be from Cuba. The fact that there's going to, as a result of the changes in travel restrictions, there's going to be more travel than there used to be to Cuba on these charter flights. We will be able to start seeing who's going, why they're going, and where are they going anywhere once they get to Cuba? Are they going to beyond Cuba? So that type of data we will actually get from our own domestic data mining companies, and that we have access to, and we'll use to tell our story. So.
I would like to add something to what has been said, and I am Cuban, and I know very well what's going on there. I just came 15 days ago from visiting my family, and there is some information that, some considerations that you have to take, some things that you should consider. When you talk to the people in Cuba, they are really not free to talk and say their opinion, because there will be consequences to those said. So if they say that they approve the government, they are in the same place. So you cannot believe what they say, because they are not free to talk. as we are free here. And the conditions that you see, how they live, you say, would you be happy? I don't think so. And why should they be happy with that? So that is some things that you have to take into consideration. Also, there is a lot of propaganda on the side of the Cuban government. And when they say healthcare is free, you have to see what is free. Because I don't see anything free. Everything has a cost. And who's paying for that cost? The doctor that is only earning $40 a month. So if the doctor is earning $40 a month, then you can say, and the nurse is earning 20, and there is no medicine. Oh yes, they can afford to give it free. I think so. So there are some things that are not exactly as they say it is. And unfortunately, in the case of Cuba, I just want to say that one thing. Those pictures that you saw there is from the country that in 1958 was the biggest producer of sugar with 5.8 tons a year, 1 million tons a year. And it was the second tourist destination, the first tourist destination in the Caribbean, one of the biggest in the world. And it was the country where the cars would first run than in America, because American companies would test them there. And one of the first countries to have color TV in the continent. And it was already in 1958, number 3rd in healthcare in the continent. So, you see, it's very difficult because you have to learn to read through what is official and what is in the background. I just want to add that.
Any more questions from the back of the room?
I just wanted to ask Ben, is there a way to somehow advertise that, or I don't know if this is legal or not, but if we have flights going from RSW to Miami and then from there they get a charter to Cuba, is that something that's viable, or people just have to put that together themselves as they have been doing?
The answer is yes. I mean, we typically do not advertise beyond markets. There's restrictions. There are some restrictions on the advertising and what we do. The advertising and promotional dollars that we can spend is not only necessarily restricted for their state statutes, but there's federal government rules that we have to abide by. However, we're going to focus on our marketing dollars. We're going to focus on what we have coming out of this. Currently we don't have service out of Miami, and that's been a little bit of a problem. We lost that service not too long ago. You can work real hard to get it, but you can lose it real quick. And so we don't even have that option right now. But you probably would not see us supporting beyond service to Cuba, even with that. Even if we have the service to Miami. And I would like to say, just if I can just for a second, just wanted to just touch on from a tourism standpoint. Again, this is more from an airport's perspective. This is not like any official visitor and convention bureau stance, but I have studied this a little bit, and people, we all know why everybody's coming for Southwest Florida, or at least we have pretty good reasons why. We have a beautiful quality of life. We have there's a lot of family down here, a lot of friends. It's just a beautiful area to visit, a lot of second homes. Whether Cuba opens up or not, I don't think that's going to have an impact on our tourism. I see Cuba as another option for the people that come to Southwest Florida, just like they do right now when they want to go to Disney World, when they want to go visit the Keys, whether they want to now have a an option to go to San Juan, they're still gonna, I believe they're still gonna come here and say, hey, you know what, I can go to San Juan now for 5 days. I'm gonna do that. Or hey, you know, Cuba, I'm gonna go to Cuba for a few days. Cuba's real close, you know, so they'll be able to do that just like the Keys is real close. So I just wanted to add that from a tourism standpoint, kind of how the airport's looking at it. And, you know, that's all I really have.
Quick question on internet connectivity and availability. Do either of you have a feel for the availability and connections for internet in Cuba?
I do not, Russell.
Yeah, in the hotel, internet was available on a charge basis. I didn't attempt to find internet outside of the hotel, but yeah, it was available at the hotel.
And I can just speak to that. We communicate with my in-laws. You send them a phone with a SIM card, and you recharge that at a pretty hefty fee. And so they are allowed to get cell phones now. That has been relaxed within the last year. So that's allowing the people who can't afford computers or have any type of internet in their home to be able to send emails. So, do we have time for one more?
Thank you. This is probably for the two ladies in the audience, Jenna and that lady that just gave us an incredible insight. How does someone go about planning a trip to Havana at this point?
Hello, Jenna Persons, for those who don't know me. You have a few options. You have to book your flight through one of the charter companies. The charter company I went through flies out of Miami and Tampa. I'm not sure if they fly out of Fort Lauderdale as well. And while you don't have to have the federal government sign off beforehand on what category you're traveling under, you still have to travel under a specified category and have a specified purpose. And you sign an affidavit to that effect, and you keep your records in case you're audited for those purposes. I know a lot of people go down there under the cultural people-to-people category, and they go through specific tours set up for that purpose, and they have set agendas and so forth. But there are many categories you can go through. I don't know how easy it is to actually set up hotel reservations on your own and do those things if you don't go through a tour company. Your other option is I have friends down in Cuba that acted as my guide and you know, made all the reservations and did everything for us, which was very helpful, and set up our appointments for the category that we traveled under and so forth. But it's not so easy. The majority of people seem to be traveling under those specific tours with specific itineraries, and you see tour buses all over the place. I think our hotel was 30% full of Americans, and they fly the flags of the country of the visitors staying in the hotel, and you saw the American flag flying at almost every hotel, which was according to my guide, which you wouldn't have seen prior as often. The majority of visitors are Canadian, and then you have your European and other South American countries, but the American visitors apparently are increasing. I also heard a lot of restaurants are opening. The hotels seem to be maxed out. You have to probably book those well in advance. My guy said they called them a couple days before we checked in. Said, well, we still want the room. The price just went up because the demand was high. Very difficult. But we'll see what's happening. I don't know what the future holds. If they open, I don't know if they're ready to open it up completely to tourism. It'll be definitely interesting to watch in the future, but there's ways to go. You have to have a specific purpose, and that information is available.
All right, folks, I think we learned a lot. Thanks greatly to our speakers, Mr. Gargano, Mr. Siegel, and certainly to our audience participants, not only Alexis and Jenna, but the lady here in the white shirt. Thank you guys very much for your insight. Great program. Thanks everyone for coming. Our next meeting is April the 22nd, here at Harborside. We'll talk about Amendment 1. You'll want to be here with land to sell and ideas to present. See you then.